Before we begin, I just want to be upfront and honest and let you know something, and that's that after I filmed this entire video, I rewatched the footage and I realized that there was a dirty tissue on the windowsill that I was not aware of, and I felt so grossed out and disgusted by the fact that I didn't see that there, but I simply can't find it in me to go back and re-record this entire video. So I just want to apologize and hope that you can see past my mistakes and see past my grossness and still love me regardless. And yeah, I just couldn't let that video proceed without addressing this. So if you can find it in your heart, please enjoy. No thanks to the internet, plastic surgery has been at like the forefront of my mind recently, and I have just been dying to talk about it in more of a long form format. And I actually did write my very first script for this, so if you see me looking off to the side, that's what I'm doing. And before I jump into all of this, I do just want to say I'm obviously not talking about people who had to get medically necessary plastic surgery for one reason or another. Every time I try to discuss like the predatory plastics industry and how I feel like it preys on women's insecurities, people are always like bringing up, well, what about I'm not talking about somebody who it is medically necessary to survive, obviously. This is including but not limited to gender-affirming surgeries, facial reconstruction after a traumatic accident, rhinoplasties because you can't breathe, jaw surgeries because you can't eat. You get the picture. Anything that is medically necessary. I'm talking about elective plastic surgery in the pursuit of trying to make yourself look younger or better, or to fit the beauty standard. Plastic surgery is one of those topics that people seem to always brush off into the whole it's not that deep category, and I don't know if it's because it's so ingrained in us or because people just don't want to have a real conversation about it, but I've learned recently that to take somewhat of an anti-plastic surgery stance online is somewhat of a death sentence. Whether you try to have like a critical discussion about the implications, harm, societal effects of the industry that preys off of women's insecurities causes, you're met with accusations of shaming women, people saying it's not that deep to touch grass, people calling you unintelligent or stupid are common responses. But I mean, what else can you expect when the majority of the internet has turned into a giant shopping center for like, quote, curing all the ugly things that are wrong with you? TikTok in particular promises financial abundance if you agree to sell whatever slop of the week they're pushing to your audience, which is typically some kind of like magic cream that will just cure your wrinkles or facial imperfections. And left and right, we find more and more ways to tell other women and ourselves that we're just not good enough how we are in our natural state. Since there's something wrong with us, there must be something we can buy to remedy that. With so many people though now directly profiting and benefiting from all these projects and procedures, I guess it's to be expected that so many people would have a visceral reaction to people saying that they think at its core all of this is kind of bad. At least that's the conclusion I couldn't help but come to, because when it just so happens that every time I try to speak my mind about how harmful I find everything, I'm met with mostly contempt. People saying, no, this is good, don't you want to look good? Don't you want to feel good? What's wrong with wanting to look good and feel good? And nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to look good and wanting to feel good. I think the issue lies in the fact that we're told there's one right way to look good and feel good. And if we don't fit into this imaginary box of what's an acceptable way of looking good and feeling good, it's told that it's not only less valid, but straight up wrong, and people will not hesitate to let you know that they feel that way. Now listen, I cannot place any judgment on any people who get plastic surgery, women especially, damned if they do, damned if they don't. So I don't find it constructive or productive to rip on women's choices who have had plastic surgery, and that's why I'm not going to be bashing anybody's choices, anybody's looks or appearance who have had surgery or haven't. But I do think it's worth to discuss that something is drawing women to feel as if they need to change everything about them, and to discuss how we react to it as the public. This video is solely meant to be discussing the public's response, reception, and discussions surrounding plastic surgery, as well as discussing why these kinds of societal norms have arisen. There's no privacy anymore, and we don't exist in a vacuum, and I found that trying to have critical discussions about the beauty industry and the plastics industry often comes with hordes of people saying that what other people do is none of your business, which, true. I agree, but when somebody shares the work that they've had done to millions and millions of people, and millions of people are weighing in or sending hate or feeling as if this affects them personally in some way, it's no longer a private thing, and whether they wanted to or not, it did impact lots of people, whether that was the intention or not. And I think that's why I just wanted to sit down and talk about my observations about like things that have happened on the internet and how the internet in particular reacts in response to plastic surgery. Whenever I share something like this on TikTok, people will try and rip apart anything that I say because they don't cover every single possible nuance to a situation in a 90-second video. So I will do my best to cover all of that. The main thesis talking point that I had in mind while sitting down to make this was the idea that while people mostly claim to be anti-plastic surgery, it's very performative, and I think a lot of times people are only anti-plastic surgery when it fits a specific narrative. Young women getting fillers, people getting a botched surgery, overdone lips, big pointy cheeks. When surgery doesn't look good, it's a conversation of, oh my god, this is horrible and scary and beautiful women should not feel pressure to have to do something like this. What have we done to our beautiful women? But when the surgery is good, the reactions are so different. Let's think Lindsay Lohan, for example, right now. I mean, despite her best efforts to claim that she's just been drinking lemon water and wearing more sunscreen, which I'll get to that later, it's impossible to deny that her face is like completely different. Reworked, redone, fine-tuned. Other celebrities like Anne Hathaway have stepped out looking particularly refreshed, and Kris Jenner, there's just no denying Kris Jenner. Celebrities have been more often than not praised for how beautiful they've been looking, and yes, I know, I'm aware that there are in fact critics. Like I said, I want to address every single nuance and possible opposing opinion that I can think of. There are plenty of people who think it's weird, scary, bad, all the above. But overall, when you take the public's average response, the average median response to these women's newish faces, overall it's quite a positive response. People aren't talking about how sad they think it is, they're talking about how good they look, asking for their surgeon's information, asking injectors online to break down every single procedure that they think that this celebrity has had done so that they can go and write it down to get it for themselves one day. So that begs the question, what makes plastic surgery sad? Just when it's bad? Are these suffocating pressures that women are feeling to literally get full surgical procedures on their face bad only when they're done wrong? Do we really care about the industry that's preying on women's insecurities every single day, or do we only care about the end result? Now, the two cases that drew me to this question in specific were the fact that there were two viral cases of plastic surgery on TikTok in the last couple weeks. They were both met with massively different responses. And this is where I'm really gonna try and hammer into every single possible nuance I can think of. The two people who you might have come across at some point are Vanna, a 21-year-old contestant from Love Island, USA, and Michelle, an older woman in her 50s who went to Guadalajara for the viral facelift and came back looking nearly 3 decades younger. The internet's response to Vanna was so cold, so cruel. She had a very obvious amount of filler in her face, which many people had many feelings about. The main feeling people were expressing was just sadness at seeing a very young girl who had work done way too young. Her yearbook photos, which people were weirdly and kind of violatingly honestly digging up, showed that she had started getting this work really early on, like maybe 16 or 17, which has implications in itself that starts rolling in, such as like parents needing to sign off on procedures and just thinking about stuff like that young. And people start asking questions of what caused somebody to feel this way so young, what caused somebody so young to feel like they had to change their entire face, what kind of parent allows their child to do that. And honestly, I think all these questions and feelings to that extent are valid. There's something really jarring about seeing somebody very young who's had a lot of work done. It almost serves as a reflection of the most extreme examples of the pressures of the beauty standard and how far society can push somebody to feel like they need to change. And while I found these feelings of sadness and the overall reflection of the societal implications of a 21-year-old getting so much done to her face to be valid, there was extremely non-constructive element of this conversation. People were sending this girl loads of hate, horrible messages, all of these memes that injectors were making out of her face and trying to gain clout over dogging on her appearance. It was just nasty and kind of hard to watch, honestly. So many people I noticed were saying these nasty things and they were hiding them behind the notion of plastic surgery is so bad and she needs to learn her lesson, saying that they would refuse to go easy on her or be nice to her because she needs to learn that surgery is bad and that women should not be getting it. It's anti-feminist, it's predatory, it feeds into the patriarchy, yada yada yada. And we'll circle back to her in a second. Now, the second case was Michelle, the woman who had the facelift, and when people saw her facelift, they could not believe how good she looked. She looked young and beautiful, to be frank. The before and after was quite stark. Like, it didn't feel like you were looking at the same person at all. And so many people were asking her, like, if this is what she looked like when she was younger, to which she answered no, and then provided pictures to prove that, yeah, this really wasn't what she ever looked like when she was younger. She looked like a completely new person. Now, as I mentioned with the celebrities, yeah, there were naysayers and critics and people who were criticizing this, but it's important, I feel, to know the overall response. The overall average response was extremely positive. And it's undeniable that the surgery does well. She looks great and she's still in recovery. The comments were full of people asking for her doctor's information and saying that this makes them so excited to know that this is an option for when they're old and ugly, I guess. Seeing these two responses back to back simultaneously at the same time made my brain just kind of like not be able to shut up about the question of like, are we only anti-plastic surgery when we don't think it looks good? I think a lot of people wanted to interpret me pointing out the irony that I found in these two reactions to be me implying that Michelle didn't get enough hate for some reason, acting as if I was asking like, why isn't anybody hating? And that's just not what I was saying or implying at all. I was trying to highlight simply the irony that I found in these two things happening at the same time and what I noticed with the public's responses. Now, a lot of people have told me that they don't think these two cases are comparable. They said one person is young and ruining her face and now she looks old and ugly, and one person is old and fixing her face and now she's young and beautiful. And while I totally get the point these people are trying to say, I think they honestly just wound up making me feel more validated in my point and perspective on this. I think at the surface level, it's really easy to see why people would find one fine and one not. Anna is young, she made these decisions very young, probably had other forces at play when it came to making them. Her brain isn't even fully developed, she hasn't fully grown into her natural face yet. Like, hello, of course it's bad and very concerning. And in Michelle's case, yeah, the surgery's great, it did its job, she looks so young, and this is where I start to waver. This is where I say the controversial point that I find it just as sad to see an older woman feel the need to change her entire face as I do when I see a younger woman feel the need to change her entire face. I find it just as saddening that no matter how old you are, it still is incredibly difficult to let go of the societal pressures and expectations imposed upon us. And I find it really sad to think there's a point that might come in someone's, maybe my or your life, where they'd rather see a face in the mirror that's not yours than live with the face that you've had your entire life. I find it sad that we kind of have decided as a society that there's a point where, you know, it's not only acceptable but encouraged for women to get plastic surgery. You hit a point where people are like, yeah, you're right, you're ugly now, and that's not okay, and you need to do something about it. Of course, as I said earlier, this is not meant to place judgment on any of the women who've made this decision. I fully believe our decisions do not exist in a vacuum, and if it weren't for the patriarchal, capitalist society that we exist under, women wouldn't feel this to be necessary. There would not be this deep desire to basically wear the mask of someone else because we're told our faces aren't good enough, our bodies aren't good enough, our skin, our hair, eyes, lips, noses. It's never good enough. It's exhausting, and it never ends. We're told that as we grow up, we're gonna stop caring about stuff like this. We're gonna stop caring about superficial things like your appearance and your body. But all of this, all these trends of the beauty industry and plastics industry, weight loss and skincare as of late, prove to me that when you get older, pressure never goes away, and people will in fact praise it, it seems. Many people told me that nobody is critical of plastic surgery from women who are about 40 plus because that's what you're supposed to do. That's the age it's intended for, so why would you criticize it? And maybe it's too radical, but I just feel just as sad thinking about women 40 up. Also 40, that is so young. That is still so young. I think it's just as sad to see women who are that age feel as they need to change everything about themselves as a woman in her 20s who feels that way. Why is it no longer sad when you reach a certain point? People keep telling me, of course, it's only natural that an older woman would want to rewind the clock and regain the beauty of her youth again. But is it? Is that natural, or is that just bullshit that's been ingrained in us? How often do you hear of men talking about how they need to get plastic surgery and Botox and facelifts in like the real world? Never. I mean, yes, again, to address nuances, of course there is like expectations based on men. I know, but you cannot deny that this is very much an issue that affects women more. Men don't talk about needing to rewind the clock to regain the beauties of their 20s when they're in their 50s and 60s. They get to embrace who they are and not feel pressure to change. And furthermore, I think it's also important to reflect on why these younger women are leaning towards surgery. It's because being old isn't considered desirable, and the benchmark for what we're considering old is being skewed younger and younger. I mean, think of Emma Stone, for example. She's recently emerged with new procedures. Some are thinking it's a facelift, some are not. I'm not one to talk on what is what. But she isn't even 40 yet. So at the end of the day, the reason the younger women are doing it is in fact for the same reason that the older women are doing it. They're afraid of looking old and trying to fix it. And if we never started telling older women that they need to do it, one would not exist without the other. I don't think that this would be something that would be crossing young people's minds if we didn't ingrain it in ourselves that when we hit a certain age, when we hit that benchmark, we're gonna need to start getting work done to maintain the appearances, to constantly look like we're just straight out of the fucking womb. In addition to trying to get rid of the features that people might perceive as old, we're also encouraging preventative procedures so that we won't have to deal with that in the first place. In the end, the discourse will always be the same. Whether you're young or old, people will only care if you look young or old, no matter what you do to get there. Because I really do think people only find this urge to resort to extreme transformative surgery sad when the end result is not desirable or physically attractive. And this brings me around to another point that a lot of people were talking about in my comments, which is saying that everybody found Vanna's case to be sad because she's so young. And I agree with that. To which somebody responded to them, let's be real. If her work was well done or more subtle or a different kind of surgery, people would not be talking about how sad it is. It's not that she's young, it's that they don't think she looks good. And I also agree with this. I think if she had walked into that villa with a subtle lip flip or a nose job or maybe some forehead Botox, this wouldn't even be a conversation. Nobody would be bringing up how sad it is that she had work done because they would have liked it. And I do think this is clear due to the fact that lots of other women on that show have had more subtle work done. Like Huda, for example, people were talking about how different she looks from her old photos, but nobody's saying how sad it is. To be frank, I think they like her. I think they like her better looking this way. She's also very young, did not do this when her brain was fully developed or her face was fully developed, same as the first girl, but nobody thinks that it's sad because they like it. And I was trying to think of other women who fit this criteria, and then my brain remembered the biggest example of them all. The woman that many claim to be the most beautiful woman in the world, Princess of Nazareth herself, Miss Bella Hadid. Bella's plastic surgery was a talking point for a long time. There was lots of denial for a while, and there still is some, but it's obvious that her face is no longer natural in almost any capacity. And she is insanely, otherworldly, undeniably gorgeous. And she started having work done when she was just 14 years old. She's expressed that she felt pressure to do so, and I wouldn't doubt that that's been the case for maybe the rest of the procedures she's had done following it. And as someone who has been around and chronically online since Bella was pre-nose job when she was just the little Hadid sister, people were not in an uproar about how sad it was that a young girl felt pressure to change her face and get surgery done. In fact, there was so much bullying directed towards her before the nose job, and that quickly went away when she emerged this new person. People didn't think it was sad, they thought it was incredible. I feel like it's also important to note that both of the women I just mentioned receiving praise for how good they looked after their cosmetic procedures, Bella and Huda, are both Middle Eastern, more specifically Palestinian women, and their procedures resulted in their faces looking more like the typical Eurocentric beauty standard, and the praise they receive for how good they looked after is just another layer of the racist undertones that a lot of these plastic surgery pressures have to them. And this example alone leads me to believe that a lot of people, as righteous as they want to sound, don't actually care about young women feeling pressure to get plastic surgery. As long as it looks good, it's fine. And on top of all this, the beauty standard is slowly shifting upward. So many celebrities denying the plastic surgery and saying it's all natural, people are feeling worse and worse about themselves. It's like, God, if this is what they look like on a normal day, then what am I? And if it's just lemon water and this special serum that transformed Lindsay Lohan's face, then I have to get that serum, right? And if it doesn't work for me, then obviously I'm just too ugly, and the only option I have is to start resorting to surgery. People who I consider absolutely beautiful are being called mid or not conventionally attractive. Like, I'm going back to Love Island, for example. People were calling Hannah, Olandria, and Amaya from Love Island to be not conventionally attractive. Girl, what the fuck? What world am I living in where all three of those women are not extremely conventionally attractive, beautiful, stunning women? Beautiful is now mid is now ugly, and God forbid a woman be ugly. The worst fate that a woman could be bestowed. There's one more point that I want to address, which is people saying, well, obviously these aren't the same people saying these things, and I don't totally think that's true. There's definitely people who pick a side and stay with it, they don't contradict themselves, stand consistently for the point that they believe in. However, have you guys seen like those bumper stickers where I'm trying to think of the exact like image that I'm thinking of that was like viral on Twitter for a little bit, but it's the people who have like the bumper stickers on their car where it's a bunch of different conflicting political views. Somebody had like a bunch of different stickers, and it was like pro-choice but anti-LGBT, but pro-BLM but anti-women's rights, or something like that. And someone pointed out, like, this is the average American's politics, low-key. And yeah, often people's politics are super inconsistent despite what we see online. And based on my life experience and having some wacko extended family, I would say that's a pretty fair analysis. And I bring that up because if people are this wishy-washy in things as serious as like human rights and politics, no doubt they're going to be the same about something like talking about plastic surgery. Lots of people don't have a specific stance. It fluctuates based on the subject in question. This also isn't a dissection of one individual response, but society as a whole, the internet as a whole, and I think that's worth doing. I still think that's a conversation worth having. People also said that I was making stuff up and that Love Island TikTok has no idea who this other woman is, which just simply isn't true, because everything I reported to the average response and the treatment of these two women was exactly as I saw. And I know for a fact that it's extremely more than possible that people on Love Island TikTok have seen Michelle with the facelift, because I have, and so have my friends, and we are real people, exhibit A. Like, if we saw her and her videos have reached like tens and tens of millions of people, I don't doubt that there's overlap. I think that's silly to say that there's no way that people know who she is. So both of these people have been re-engaging in online discussion about plastic surgery, so if you're talking about plastic surgery, the internet's just gonna keep pushing you plastic surgery content. People called me shallow and unintelligent for, quote, treating TikTok as a monolith, but I honestly think it's very important to dissect and talk about people's responses and reactions to things like this, even if it's the way they're acting online. These are real people's real responses, and whether it's over the internet or not, it is still a reflection of the real world and real people's opinions. We're in an it's not that deep epidemic, and sometimes it really is that deep. I don't think it's shallow to notice a social trend and want to discuss the causes and responses to it. I feel like I've noticed that a handful of women view this extreme transformative plastic surgery kind of in the same way that finance pros think of billionaires. And listen, I know it's not the same thing, it's just a comparison on the mindset, but they know that there's something wrong with it. They know that the root causes are not good. They know that there's something not quite right, but they don't want to speak too negatively about it just in case that's going to be them one day, to avoid looking like a hypocrite. And once again, cannot place any blame, any shame on women who choose to get plastic surgery, because that is just the world that we live in. I understand. It's been so hard for me to tell myself that I don't need to change anything about my face, and honestly, I have a really hard time believing it. I accumulated so many hours of just like staring in the mirror, pinching and pulling and adjusting and crying, wishing I was prettier, wishing my nose was straighter, my jaw was smaller, my lips were bigger, my eyes wider, my cheeks sharper, the cleft in my chin shaved off. I have been conditioned to look at myself and only see flaws, and you probably have too, and so have all the other women in the world, I bet. And I'm not totally sure how I want to wrap this up, but I sat down to write this script the other day because I just felt so angry. I felt so angry at the world for convincing women they aren't good enough, and I felt angry at the people in my comments for trying to convince me that I was unintelligent for wanting to have a conversation about this. I was mad at myself for being insecure, even after all of the mental work I've tried to do on myself to not feel this way, the way that I've been conditioned. And I felt so mad that when older women feel pressured to have work done by society to change their face, it's not seen as sad, it's not seen as women who are being preyed on for their insecurities, it's not viewed as a product of the patriarchy, it's just viewed as what you're supposed to do when you start to sag. It's what you gotta do when you lose your youth. And I don't like it. And I ultimately do stick to my original thesis that people only see plastic surgery as sad when it's not done well, because otherwise it's a miracle, right? Thank God we have this option to change our entire face, but like, God forbid it goes wrong. So at the end of the day, it's not about the morality or the ethics of plastic surgery itself, it's about how good you look. And if you were, quote, beautiful before, then how dare you mess with your face? And if you weren't, then it's not that bad, I guess, right? Probably good that they did it. And either way, you will be guaranteed droves and droves of people who say that they preferred you one way or another. You are damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that wasn't too controversial. I know it was on TikTok, so I'm already bracing myself for hordes and droves of people to tell me to die. This is something I have been feeling very strongly about, and I'm just really sick of seeing people feel like they're not good enough because of this standard that's being imposed on them, and feeling like they need to literally cut open their face to exist and to feel comfortable. I think it's just been getting worse and worse, and people don't want to talk about it, and every time you try to talk about it, people will tell you to like shut up. And like I said in the beginning of this video, I don't know if that's just because like they like agree with it and they want to get it one day, so it's just like they want to avoid sounding like a hypocrite for talking bad about it, or if people really genuinely don't think it's deep. But I do think it's incredibly deep, unfortunately. I also wanted to say thank you so much for 10,000 subscribers. This has been something I've been working towards for a while now. I've been having a really good time making videos more consistently, and I'm just really glad that you guys are liking them. So thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope that you enjoyed seeing something a little bit different, a little break from crocheting and knitting for a week. If you're missing the crocheting and knitting, you can always check out my website and my Etsy for crochet patterns patterns and crochet and knit handmade pieces that I currently have for sale. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled content next week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. You are beautiful just as you are. Bye.